And yeah, I just want to share a couple things with you. Number one, we have a big announcement to do this week coming up Sunday. So make sure you're here for that. And it'll be exciting when I announce it. Very exciting for you. And it's exciting for me to be able to announce it. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to show you some scripture real quick from today's reading. We're reading through 1 Corinthians. And as we're doing this, Paul is cycling around on several topics. If you start reading, maybe even in chapter 5, maybe even 4, there's some topics about what we do with our freedom, sexual sin, how to handle things outside the church, inside the church, principles that we look at. Just some really good things. They're not like laid out in like this orderly form like, all right, let's talk about this topic. And they're sort of intermixed and intertwined, which for me, that makes them interesting to me, because I like to see how things develop from one chapter to another. And so each one has a little bit in that. So if you want to pre-read, I hope you are reading. If you're not reading the Bible, we want to get you to do that. But in verse 12 here, it says, "You say, I am allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. And even though I'm allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything." And so we're now looking at this idea of personal freedom. And Paul is sort of introducing it here. I don't know if I go back, if he's already touched on a little bit. I might reread a couple times here. But this idea of personal freedom and how we act. And then really what Paul is going to hammer down on is this personal freedom not within the church walls, personal freedom outside the church walls. Now, it's really important to realize that Paul, the city of Corinth he's talking to, he's referencing, he was there, he spent time there, was a tent maker there, and sort of planted a church. This is the second letter, not the first. If you read today's chapter, it'll say in the earlier letter. And so there's also 2 Corinthians chapter 2, which we have some results from the first letter that follows up. So all that's sort of playing in here. This will take us till next Sunday in reading, so it'll be a 2-week tour we have here, maybe as a message focus. So anyways, as we think about this, and Paul and various things. So Corinth was a very affluent city. It was very metropolitan, you could say. Not in how it's used there, but cultural, so mixing, because it was a port city, it was a trade city. It was a center of learning. There are so many things about Corinth that makes it really, 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 really applicable today to our culture of ideas and confronting people and various things. And I really think Paul, in this book of Corinth, helps us really understand how we need to navigate with our freedom in the idea or concept of sharing Christ or being there to opportunities for Christ in that. And so we're going to look at that from chapter 10. Chapter 10, and it goes into 11 a little bit. Probably some of my favorite. And actually some of my life verses in here where Paul says, I've become all things that I might win some. That's sort of like my life verse. That's really personal to me. And I think if there's any verse in the Bible that sticks out in my heart, that's what it is. I become all things to all people so that I may win some. And there's a context that he's saying that in. Not that he's a people pleaser, he's a God pleaser as he does that. And again, it's not within the church, it's outside the church. Because within the church, he has a total different stance on things in that regard. So anyways, so if you're reading, look at those two things. Inside the church language and talk, outside the church language and talk. How we behave inside the church is a little different than how we behave outside the church. And it's just an interesting thing. So we'll look at that this week. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, right at the end to 11. If you want to pre-read that stuff, you can do that. I think we won't read that till Monday. I don't have the calendar. Anyways, it's going to be fun. I think it's very, very relevant for our culture, and I hope I can make it incredibly relevant for us where we're all going. That works. And then we can start growing into this idea of what Paul is presenting in our own lives. How do we grow? By number 1, saying I need to do that. Number 2, I need to talk to God about it. Number 3, I need to find some people to walk with as we do that, whether it's your home, your family, or various things. But I think there's a way we can all move forward. So anyways, this is the primer, letting you know, maybe you know somebody would like to hear this message. Maybe you have a friend that's sort of like in this has questions about this. We'll invite them to church. I think we'll at least tickle them a little bit where they need a scratch or something. I don't know, itch where they're scratching. I don't know how you say that stuff. Anyways, thank you for letting me do this. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope to see you Sunday. And if you can't come in person, come online. There'll be people online that'll hear this as well. Love to have you. Let us know you're there. Give us a shout out. Use the connection card, connection form to sort of let us know you're there, and we would greatly appreciate it. Peace and out. Have an awesome rest of your week. Until Sunday, I get to go to a Michigan game